Good evening, everyone. I'm Darryl D'Souza, founder of Earthkeepers Connect and convener of the New Earth Summit, your host for this evening, the ninth day of the pre-summit webinars leading to the New Earth Summit in November. It is the second edition of India's first integrative summit on solutions to our problems in health, food, farming, and environment. I extend a warm welcome to our esteemed panelists of this evening, and also on behalf of our 10 Earthkeeper groups in India and overseas. And we express our gratitude to you for taking out your time from your busy schedules to be with us and to share your wisdom, so that all watching this webinar and the recordings later may know more about a holistic way of educating our children and adults in a constantly changing world. Our topic for today is holistic education. So I will start with introducing our panelists to the audience. Ameeta Sanghavi Shah is a mind detective, a code journeyer with people to transform stress to mind, body, and soul wellness. As a transpersonal psychotherapist, a mind coach, she conducts therapy, workshops, and classes. She works on emotional management, self empowerment, mind body healing, and resolving relationships, marital, and parenting stresses. She has been practicing for over 20 years and uses hypnotherapy, past life regression, inner child work, neuro linguistic programming, emotional freedom technique, breathwork, and more techniques in her practice. Dr. Jayaprakash Jala holds a 15-year plus years of versatile experience in teaching and training. He is a popular career counselor and teacher trainer. He has a PhD in English from VIT University and worked for VIT University as an assistant professor for 10.6 years. He did his MA, MPhil in English along with a PG diploma in transitional studies from University of Hyderabad. Dr. Jala was a certified master trainer for Dale Carnegie High Impact Teaching Skills, HITS, and for Wipro Mission 10X. He was a coordinator for leadership labs in India and held leadership roles in Toastmasters International. He is a mentor for ERIDE, a student-run Indian NGO. He received South Asian International Excellence Award in 2017 for career counseling and several other awards for excellence in academics. He published 25 research papers in various journals and conferences and their proceedings. He serves on the editorial boards of international journals and reviews research papers for international publishing houses. He visited Italy and Oman on professional assignments and trained students from South Korea, Germany, and Sri Lanka. He is currently working as National Education Manager at Rising Star Outreach of India. Dr.Coomi Vevania is an education futurist with a PhD in literature and PhD in education, a TEDx speaker, internationally acclaimed educator, literary critic, teacher educator, writer, and storyteller. In October 2016, she retired as a professor and head of Department of English at the University of Mumbai, India, and is now the founder director of Center for Connection, Education and Management. He has published 11 books and 58 papers that have appeared in peer-reviewed national and international journals and critical anthologies, and has won numerous national and international awards as a renowned speaker who delivers lectures and leads seminars and workshops for teachers and parents. Dr. Vevania is passionate about teaching pedagogy, and she has been actively involved in curriculum designing at all levels and has helped set up study centers in India and abroad. In 2013, her book on education, Sourceful Intelligence, Understanding Uniqueness and Oneness Through Education, was selected as among the 18 best books published in the USA in 2013. And her most recent book, What Children Really Want, have, has received critical acclaim from educators, psychologists, parents, writers from all over the world, and even the Dalai Lama. In August, September of 2015, she was selected by the World Leaders in Education, WLE, as one of the 35 women from across the world changing educational paradigms and was asked to present a paper at the international conference in the University of Waikato in Hamilton, New Zealand. Nandita Deosthale. Nandita has been actively involved in educational environments for the last 20 years. While at UWC, Mahindra College, Pune, she designed and implemented their experiential learning curriculum for more than 1,000 students from over 65 nations and created partnerships with at least 30 NGOs to enable this learning. He has taught classical and folk dance, organized and run short courses related to environment, development, art, religion, and service for students from India and other countries. He is currently an active homeschooler and co-founder of Further Learning and the Learning Center. A self-motivated leader and graceful team player, she brings to the Learning Center her vast experience in building and managing organizations, working with children and young adults, her sunny disposition and her spontaneity as well. Alongside education, she enjoys reading, dancing, and swimming, and watching her flowers grow finally.
Yeah.
So, so that's wonderful. I am so happy to be with such a experienced and well established and panelists with so many years of wonderful service. And I'll go right into uh, our program for the day. So we will now begin the 3 rounds of questions for our panelists that will conclude in 1 hour so that we can keep the next hour for Q&A with the audience. Accordingly, I request, I request each panelist to address each question in a maximum of 5 minutes. This is for our audience. If you would like to receive the recorded videos of this webinar, please visit earthkeepersconnect.org and click allow to the notifications from our mobile news app. You can also subscribe to our channel, the New Earth Summit on YouTube, for the recording of this webinar. And our audience need not wait till the end of 1 hour or till 7 p.m. to put their questions in the Q&A box. As the speakers speak and you have some question, you can type it in the Q&A box. So here is our first question for the panelists. Do you think that children nowadays are getting the appropriate education in mainstream schools? If not, then what do you think is missing in the mainstream, education space? Uh, would Nandita like to take that first?
Okay. I'm going to take a step back before we discuss what is right or wrong with the education into actually first establishing what is education. And since I can't answer for anyone else, I'll state what education means to me, and therefore what I see is lacking in the current, what we're terming as mainstream education. So I'm going to quote two of my favorite thinkers. The first one is John Dewey, where he says that education is a process of living and not a preparation for future living. And the second thinker is Doris Lessing, who said all education is indoctrination. indoctrination, and we have to tell our children that and make them aware of this fact at all times. I'm not quoting her verbatim, but that's what she has said. So based on this, my understanding of education is that it is not passive. It is a way of experiencing life, of learning to, by first listening, then to receive and respond in a manner that is thoughtful and communicative and taking into consideration the entire society or community around you. Now, if that is what my understanding of education is, then I would say that the current process of mainstream education is not one of being or what I just determined as education, but one of just having to kind of be the receptacle for collecting information. And to hold on to that information and somehow remember and regurgitate it in terms of an examination, or so there's no creativity, there is no understanding of concepts or relating these concepts that we're supposedly learning within four walls of a classroom into one's own life or understanding of one's life. So that to me is the fundamental lack of current mainstream schooling. We are all very much into competition, which I find fairly meaningless because it's not a healthy competition where we're vying with each other to understand things better, but instead we are doing so to get 2 more marks or achieve 98%, which is really not going to get us anywhere. I mean, my question to mainstream schooling is, how much of our mainstream schooling as we adults use in our current lives?
Wonderfully put. Yes, very clearly. Thank you, Nandita. Dr. Kumi, what would you like to say about it? What are your views?
With 264 million children as school dropouts, according to the latest UNESCO report, obviously serious changes need to be made in the system. Jiddu Krishnamurti, an educationist I deeply revere, as much as Ken Robinson and Yuval Noah Harari more recently, have all been talking about education as creating a change in consciousness. Unfortunately, this word consciousness is just so nebulous. But if we substitute it by the word mindset, it's still not the same. Our current emphasis, as the first speaker very rightly pointed out, is so heavily on information that we're just information junkies. And today this is useless. It's information that can be got at a flick of a button. So we have overemphasized the horizontal axis, which is information and knowledge, and completely neglected the vertical axis, which is self-regulation and self-awareness. So to my mind, this is the major flaw in the system itself. Also, when we talk about a system, there is some rigidity that comes with the concept. Can we replace this idea of system with living ecosystems, with something much more organic, much more interrelated? Education is primarily, to most people, necessary for acquiring jobs. But in the age of AI and biotechnology, we know that in the next few years, more than 65% of the jobs that we know today are going to be rendered redundant. What are we preparing our children for? We are merely throwing darts in the dark. We are not sure what we are educating them for. We have neglected life skills. Now, in some schools, SEL, social emotional learning, has become fashionable, but I don't see it really filtering into the educational system, the mainstream educational system. Having said that, there is still very strong hierarchy which favors STEM subjects: science, technology, engineering, math. Literature, the arts, vocational courses, they take the back seat. And this is completely unhealthy, because as psychologists have very often told us, and way back since, I think, the early 20th century, that we all have different learning styles and different intelligences. But since we only test a few intelligences, there are several who don't make the mark. The third issue that I feel is very problematic is our total emphasis on testing rather than assessment. When you are testing, the scores are important. As the first speaker rightly pointed out, it's competitiveness. How much of competitiveness do we need? As much as salt in food, but we add a dollop to it. Everything is competitive. If you don't offer prizes, if you don't offer a competition, nobody wants to take part. I'll come to that a little later. But this is an extremely unhealthy tendency, and it does not focus on the process of learning. We keep saying that education must become learner-centric, but as I see, it's still very strongly teacher-centric. When it becomes learner-centric with complete attention given to the learning process rather than the teaching process, there will be a change. And similarly, when we emphasize assessment, or rather the process of learning, rather than the end result, which is just a few facts and figures, which we test, then the system is likely to change. And quickly, I'll add one more point here. Today, I see one of the problems as parents and educators not being on the same page. We have Google parents today. They're constantly on Google. They accept whatever comes from Google. I'm not saying everything that comes from Google is wrong, but a lot of it is trivia. It is not well researched and well documented evidence or facts that they are reading. Therefore, I feel that if schools get together with parents, and parents and teachers are on the same page, then we can effect a change in education. These are some of my responses.
Thank you, Dr. Coomi. Dr. Jayaprakash, could you please give your views on the question?
As the previous two panelists have addressed this very well. One of the major challenges that I see with the mainstream education system of our country is fragmentation and compartmentalization. So we have divided education into pieces, into subjects, into various streams, and we forgot the fact that education comes together. At the end of the day, the culmination, the combination of all these subjects is going to create an educated person. So many times teachers do not sit together to plan the education process. Teachers would like to do their own job, cover their syllabus, give their marks. But that's not how education happens. Education is an end result. Okay. Of course, as Nandita said, it's a process, but every process, is aimed towards accomplishing something. So we are trying to accomplish the wholesome education, the holistic person, the completeness of an individual. That happens only by looking at how we can improve each person. So we need to overcome this fragmentation mentality, okay, where we look at every subject separately and we only focus on marks, ranks, and the last evaluation, the final evaluation, instead of looking at evaluation as a process of improvement. So we look at it as evaluation as an outcome bearer. No, it's not an outcome bearer. It's supposed to be continuous process. So formative assessment is what we need to look at. If we want formative assessment to happen, then we should stop looking at education as subjects, but teachers should have a wholesome perspective towards teaching. Okay, we should not, a maths teacher cannot think in teaching English is the responsibility of an English teacher. Learning science, basics, can only happen from a science classroom. So this attitude needs to change. For that attitude to change, we need to begin the change from the very syllabi that we, propose. Syllabus that we have in the textbooks is only suggestive. Now, this realization has to happen in every teacher. Okay, relevance is what we need to look at. How we relate the syllabus given to us to the current context and to everyday life. And then, it should pave a path to the future. If we are not looking into the future with what we are teaching, then teacher is it's a short-sighted process. A teacher should be able to connect the learner to the future. That is the best form of education, and that can only happen through bringing reforms, and these reforms can happen only by a lot of discussion. The great minds of this country need to sit and bring in the concepts that need to be discussed. Once we discuss them in detail like this, in a platform like this, then only we'll be able to come to a conclusion on what changes we need to make.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jayaprakash. Ameeta, what are your views?
Yes, thank you, Darryl. So I think all the speakers have shared some very relevant things, and we are on the same lines. What I would say is that a student after school doesn't remember the content so much as they remember the atmosphere of that classroom. And there's so much trauma that happens because it is too competitive, and it is this sort of fragmented thing, and it's becoming more materialistic, like just go for the jobs, just get the marks. And so everybody is in a sort of a rat race somehow or the other, because it's this whole consumerist materialistic background, like who will make the most money. So your even career choices, choose the career which will make you money, don't choose the one. So and it is information loaded, so there's so much overwhelm and anxiety and traumas and beliefs caused by all of this, and I think so somewhere we are missing something major. And how can we bring in, I call them like the 4 R's, like what are important for life, for EQ, for what's the use if you don't have any mental health, the meta ability. You have all the abilities, but no meta ability. So to develop this meta ability, the emotional well-being thing, we need to have that understanding of what are the things that bring that. And one of that is it's not taught directly. It's, you can't have a moral science subject teaching it. It's the atmosphere and the beingness and the presence of the teachers themselves, the presence of the parents themselves, because I think we are coming from consciousnesses that are disturbed. So it's somewhere there is a need for some healing processes, some training processes for parents, teachers, to bring a different climate and quality to the students and to the classroom. And that would be like children then grow up out of the system, having the ability to have critical inquiry, and because today is a world of information and misinformation. So in fact, even the education system could be giving a misinformation, like history needs to be rewritten. Now it's been written from the British India perspective. So today, even the pandemic is viewed from one paradigm, the germ theory. Can it be viewed from the terrain theory? So we need critical thinking of these things, because that's how the solutions will emerge, and that's how you will live your life and be less frightened. Instead of getting into all these fear states, we're having mental health crises like anything. And this is because the way these classrooms are structured and the way the parents and whole system is going into this toss-up. So maybe school can be an entry point, and therefore sometimes unschooling, homeschooling are not bad ideas, because you step out of that brainwashing that happens in that atmosphere. More than the subjects is that atmosphere that happens like that. And the core things of relationships, how do you relate to yourself, to your body, to the earth, to the sky, to everything, there's a way of relating that needs to be restored. a sense of responsibility, which is not just the duty-bound responsibility, but really caring for your body, caring, just discipline taught as caring, and reverence for life, which is missing because everything is chop and uh, destruction of, and that's called development. So all of these things, and the resilience, so handling setbacks is the biggest. So it's not about being the topper of the class, because it's often found that the toppers of the classroom not able to handle the risks and failures of the world after the classroom. So there is also the need for resilience training and acceptance of different levels of excellence that are there. So it's not just the marks, maybe a student who doesn't get the marks is excellent in some other way. So this kind of appreciation. And this can be done with, social and emotional quotients, how do you need all of this brought into the classroom as a way of being, around whatever content we are teaching. You also need to have a way which is more cooperative, and seeing the teacher more as a facilitator, the class as a community, the student as coming with their own potential, not one empty vessel to be just filled up. The student is coming with something, and the student needs to self-realize through our processes, not be a dumping ground. And these require different kind of inquiry, soul searching, and that's why I call myself a mind detective. But really everybody needs to be a detective. Help the child to be a detective to themselves. What am I good at? How can I develop something? How can I create and contribute something? And how will I study that? And then I liked Jayaprakash's point that it's fragmented, and that's where you can bring 5 sciences together to create something, right? So this is what I would like to say.
Thank you, Ameeta. That's um, some more angles to it from your experience, and that was wonderful. And I would like to ask a further question on this before getting into the next, because first I want to narrate a short experience of mine. I think it was 3 years back that when I visited Delhi, an appointment was already priorly fixed, but I was invited to the Indian Air Force headquarters over there, and it happened uh, because there was a lady who was an Air Force, pilot's wife, and she had a previous year she had attended my health workshop for some health issues in Delhi, and then she found it very beneficial. She had improvements herself. Then she used some of those things on her son, and she saw improvements there. So I didn't know this was happening in the background, but apparently when I got to the headquarters, I was sitting with the top 4 5 people there in the of the organization, and they just mentioned to me that we really like the kind of work that you're doing with the book, and also I'm saying, okay, wonderful that you know about it. And all 3 of them said, we've almost read your entire book, and it's very good. And uh, could you do a version that could be for children, and then we would like to circulate it in, I think they have
Wow,
235 schools across the country.
that would be amazing.
So I said, wow, that's amazing. And I said, so I asked them, how come this decision? And they said there are such fundamental, basic, and necessary things that are there in this book. For example, a simple understanding of the human body, of how it can fall sick, how you can heal it, what are the what is health, what is food, what is nutrition. And they said it's completely missing in our the working knowledge of it is missing. You have biology, but after you learn that how many bones are there in the human body and how many liters are flowing in your blood, and how many that the skin is the largest organ of the body, that seems to be information that cannot be translated into some use, right? um, so taking that example, my question is about this, that in the current system, since all the panelists have also indicated that there are things that are missing. So the question is there a mechanism, if things have to change in the current schooling systems? Have you all ever seen any mechanism where there is where they look a little bit at the present, that what is required nowadays, you know, in the world, what is failing because of a lack of information and understanding, and if that is put as a benchmark, then how are we going to make up that gap to have a better life in society by bringing it into the education system? And perhaps at that time they can evaluate, how much is ancient history or, history of the last 500 years so important to put into the heads of our children? Is it going to impact our present and the immediate future, or is it going to address problems that we have in the world today? So, have you ever seen any mechanism in this country or overseas where you have seen at a national level of a country that there is such a kind of a board where they evaluate, what is required now, and does that information come into the education departments or the head of the because from there they can trickle down and redo the subjects and all that.
Yeah, very briefly. Um, these are issues which are of concern to educators and education psychologists, education futurists, etc. We are seriously thinking about the relevance of the content. How relevant is the content to our learners? Otherwise, it is, to put it very brutally, being intellectual bullies and saying, I think this is important and therefore you learn it. As you just mentioned, history of 500 years with all the details which you regurgitate, this is important. I think things are changing pretty quickly, especially in the Western world, in the Scandinavian countries, Korea, Singapore, and the more advanced countries is seriously working on a very, very powerful technique called phenomenon-based learning, the PBL. And when you do phenomenon-based learning, you're taking actual situations, actual problems, actual issues, and you are integrating the different subjects, no fragmentation. And you're asking the students and encouraging them to work on solutions. And this overall process is what gets assessed rather than testing. So I think it's changing. It's not changing fast enough. Also, with the numbers that we have in our country, and unfortunately, with the kind of teacher training programs we have, we are still not ready for this. The new NEP is talking about multidisciplinary teaching, but this is a very major issue. When teachers are not really when they are not really good at their own subject, how can they really integrate other subjects? This is something which one has to consider. And I would say it's like putting the cart before the horse. You have to change teacher training programs first in order to bring about a change. Finland and Sweden and all these countries work for 8 to 10 years, serious teams of research working with educationists, and then they came up with these new programs. But I don't say everything is hunky-dory or things should always be like this. But yes, people are thinking about the relevance, because thank God our millennials are saying, no, we are just not interested in learning your stuff. We'll drop out, we'll get into other programs. And thank God they are saying that, because then it makes us sit up and want to do something for them.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kumi. Yes, the other panelist, Nandita.
So I also feel the onus suddenly, and for the last many years, has been on the school or the education system, and there's not much onus on the parent. I think it's important for parents to understand what their child needs, where are these needs stemming from, what can they do to understand the education process, to ask questions about it. I think some amount of deschooling is required for parents, because what is happening is, if we have been brainwashed into being a certain way and following a set path, we have to succeed, and success only means financial. It really doesn't mean anything else. You might have all the ulcers and blood pressure in the world, but hey, if I'm earning 5 crores a month, great, I'm successful. But so what is the meaning of success? If you're not, as an adult, going to be asking yourself these questions, you're not going to be helping your child. And schools more and more are becoming daycare centers. They cannot exist as spaces of learning. So even if a teacher is going through good professional development, is passionate, wants to bring many things to the table, many times it's the parent who will tell you, what are you doing? Why isn't my child, getting homework? Why isn't my child, what are you doing with my child? Right? So understanding education on the part of the parent, and this is a big topic in India because our network is huge. I mean, the demographic is really wide. So I'm going to just stick with the supposedly educated demographic right now and not even look at the other vastness that's there. The government primary schools and education system is another ball game in itself. So if you're looking at education and if you're looking at what you say, primary or high school education, which is privatized, then even there the conversation which can take place is not happening.
Thank you, Nandita. Yes, very right observation. Any other panelists? Oh,
I would like to just address this. This is a very important question. We run schools, Rising Star Outreach of India, we run schools. So in our schools, we follow a concept called time traveling. Now we help children do time traveling. Okay. See, I'm not against history. For me, history is very essential and important. It is as much important as we teach advanced technology in our schools. See, the reason is that child's behavioral education can happen much more through arts and humanities subjects and social sciences subjects than through science subjects. That's a fact that I would agree to. And I would like to invite our co-panelists to address this, because behavioral education is as important as the informative education that we give the children. So what I would like to say is, the first point, for example, I would like to put a very generic example from our own lives. If nobody ever appreciates do you take interest in dressing well? Okay, dressing well, let us say, is taken for granted as a concept. We are supposed to dress well. If that is the psychological approach to dressing, how many years will dressing well, the concept of dressing well will survive? Not many years, I'm sure. Because we have a culture of appreciating each other's dress. Oh, that's a nice dress. Where did you buy? It's good looking. You're looking very good today. It's a culture. That's a culture that we have built into our system. So people generally take interest in dressing up well. So in the same way, if we take the concept of behaving well for granted and say you're supposed to behave well. So I've seen teachers approaching, good behavior of children like this. Children, they're supposed to behave well. No, good behavior should be appreciated. If you don't appreciate it, you are taking it for granted. Anything that is taken for granted will die down in the process. Okay? Please feel free to oppose or share any opinion about this. I may not be 100% right, but anything that is taken for granted will not survive for long. So we need to start appreciating the behavior of children. In our schools, we have a system called STAR program. So a teacher will gift a star, which is a very inexpensive, a small sticker, okay, for good behavior that day to the child. And she will counsel the child, okay, at the end of the day, say, tomorrow you're going to get a star if you don't do this. What you have done today, if you don't repeat this, you're going to get this star tomorrow. Okay, what are we doing? We are appreciating, recognizing good behavior of the children. And children love to receive a star. The day they don't receive a star, they would love to look forward to receiving another star. Okay, I'm not saying this is the only way. There can be so many other ways of appreciating good behavior. We need to teach good behavior. Before I finish, just the last sentence. We tell children to imagine, we teach children what Gandhi has done in South, father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi has done in South Africa. And we stop there and say, he got down, okay, in India from the ship in September 15th, 2020. What would be the first moment that Gandhiji is going to take up for India? This is the question we leave the children with. Okay, before we teach everything about what Gandhiji has contributed to this country, we tell them, today if Gandhiji is here, what do you think he will fight for? So we let children come out with various issues. So this is social relevance that we are creating through a subject called history. History is essential. Yes.
thank you. Thank you, Jayaprakash. Yes, Ameeta.
Yeah, so I think, see, we have an awareness that these components are needed, but it's very fragmented. So there'll be a psychologist sitting in one corner, there'll be this, that, but it's not all brought together. And I like that point where, you know, you bring in the behavior change, the emotional part of it into the classroom. One of the ways is appreciating, one of the ways is critical inquiry. So out of the box opinions also taken. And yeah, history is a very good topic in that sense to, you know, talk about events and what would have somebody done different, this event would have been different. And so it brings that type of consciousness. And I think there is a lot of need for compassion and appreciation of the earth and the resources and things like this. So these type of things can be brought by the quality of the teacher. So one thing is what knowledge the teacher has, but also the approach of being healed and compassionate. So the way that children are welcomed in, or if a non-performer is there, the way the whole classroom is trained to look at somebody is not by their marks or not by their popularity or not by their excellence. So she's excelling in sports, then, you know, the good children and the bad children, or the clever children and the dumb children. And there has to be some active ways to change these atmospheres around everything. So there is a lot of psychological safety that is brought into classrooms, is what I would think as a system. You know, apart from the content, and a lot of content can be woven around these things, just like Jayaprakash said, or, you know, Nandita said about like having these dance and other type of talents. And around this, you can bring up a lot of awareness of compassion, care, cooperation, teamwork. There's a need for bringing back this consciousness to the planet.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Ameeta. That was a very nice you know, insights that you gave. Now we can move to the next question, and it is, how does the model of education that each one of you follow, you know, how does it meet the needs of our modern generation? Dr. Kumi, would you like to take it first?
Sure. Um, the model that I have come up with is called technopoiesis, which is designed to bring about a change in consciousness. Now, if we operate from a lack-based consciousness, then we see children as a blank page, and we feel that we need to write scripts of our choice. But if we think in terms of abundance, that the children have come to the earth with huge amount of wisdom and their own ways of perceiving things, then the overall approach to education changes. So through the kind of thinking process, which I call technopoiesis, which is a combination of left brain and right brain thinking, we transition all our students, whether we are using the more modern methods or the more traditional methods. We transition them from a self versus other consciousness. Now, each of the panelists here, you have the kind of knowledge and the experience which I don't have. So do we have to be in competition? No. The next step is self and other. So how do you promote this self and other consciousness where you give, I take, I give, you take, and sharing is what is all about. And that's where all your 21st century skills of compassion and empathy and all come in. Growth mindset, resilience, all of that comes in there. Self and other. But we do not want to stop here. The IB program, the IGCSE program, and some of these good programs, they come and they stop at this point. But technopoiesis takes you to the third level, which is all is self. Because we are a part of the matrix. When you understand that we are all essentially one, then social, emotional, spiritual intelligence just grows with it. So technopoiesis has 7 stages to it in this very short presentation. I cannot run through those 7 stages of thinking, but Teachers have applied it in India, abroad, and they find that they can apply it from the pre-primary level to the professional courses. It addresses all the domains: cognitive domain, affective domain, social domain, and the spiritual domain. And in my work, I never fight shy of the spiritual domain. I think it's hugely important. And as psychologists now tell us, once we develop spiritual intelligence, all other intelligences automatically get enhanced. So through this process of technopoesis, which can be used by any teacher to teach any subject at any level, we want to take the students in every class from a self versus other to a self and other to an all is self consciousness. When I first began this work, I thought it would really fit in very well, and teachers who teach the humanities and the arts would be able to do it well. But I was apprehensive of how the science and the math and the management teachers would do it. To my utter delight, they have done magic with technopoesis. And it's not because there is any I here. It's just reaching out and understanding what quantum physicists have been telling us for so long, that there is an explicit order, and at the level of the explicit order, you, I, chair, table, water bottle, everything is different. But at a deeper implicate level, we are essentially one. So all the 21st century skills that children need to really acquire in order to be able to cope with the exponential changes that are happening. And of course, as we are told by futurists like Gerd Leonard, humanity will change more in the next 20 years than it has in the past 300 years. So we need a new toolkit. We need new skills. And with technopoesis and this expanded consciousness, we will be able to work in more humane and more sensible ways. This is my take on it.
Thank you, Dr. Kumi. Yes, indeed, very futuristic and very deep and, very interesting too. And I'm sure all our panelists would really like to understand more, and of course, our audience. So in the chat box, if you have a website or, something that you want to type over there where people can see this, seven levels of the system, please do type it in.
Very briefly, I have expanded on it in my book, Sourceful Intelligence, Understanding Uniqueness and Oneness Through Education. The name, you already have the names. Yes. And what children really want. So this process of technopoesis can be used for any kind of learning. In my book, I have an example of a parent indicating to a child this is a spider, and not calling it a spider and finishing it off, because as Madame Montessori says, the minute you name it, the child loses interest, but exploring how to arouse the curiosity of the child through technopoesis. So it's in both my books.
Thank you, doctor. And I will copy and paste it in the chat, the name of the two books, so everybody can have access to it. Nandita, what would you like to share about the kind of system that you use, and how relevant and how well it's working with your students?
Well, thanks, Darryl. So my colleague Anjali and I started the Learning Center 5 years ago. It stemmed out of an idea that both of us had. We had both been working in mainstream schools for quite a long time, and somewhere along the way, I had a child, and when we did, my husband and I realized that this is not the kind of education or schooling we would like to provide for him. And so our journey into delving into different ways of approaching education, what is education, really kind of went to another level of thinking for us because of our child. And so from that thinking came that we shall not send him to school. He will exist with us and learn with us just as we exist and learn with him. Through this also came about thinking that, okay, this is great, this is working really well for him, but there also needs to be a space where some things which work well in a formal setting, where there are other children, where there are other adults, where it gives space for more thoughts and ideas to evolve. Also there, I mean, we're a nuclear family. He's an only child. It's not like homeschooling means he's jailed in the house, but to have more prolonged interactions, more meaningful interactions, not just maybe on a football field or in a cello class, but slightly more wide and deep, where conversations, different cultures, different ideas, there's a confluence of these. So that gave rise to our center, where we approach learning for everybody. It's not, there are no teachers, we have facilitators. It's a zero hierarchy model. So just because Anjali and I started it, that doesn't mean we are the sole decision makers of what we do. Our facilitators and parents and students are as much stakeholders as both of us. We also recognize that if, for lack of a better word, the client is not the parent, but the child. They are coming to our space. It is their needs that we have to look at first, and not what the parent wants us for them. We take it into consideration, of course, but our interaction and understanding of the child is more important than the needs of the parent. So there is that, that's where we fundamentally approach. We're slightly different from Jayaprakash, as we give no stars. We don't have good behavior and bad behavior. It doesn't mean that there's absolute chaos that happens, but to understand that if a child is throwing a tantrum or being aggressive, that there's something deeper to it than just like, I feel like throwing a tantrum now, so I'll throw it. No, there is 9 out of 10 times there is something deeper to it, and to understand where that anger or where the frustration is coming from and to address that. We felt that if we have a good child and therefore there'll be a not good child, will again immediately create a difference between the children, and therein also a sense of competition. She got a star, I didn't get it. I'm sorry, I'm just using your star as an example, Jayaprakash. I don't have anything personal against it. But to create more of like, even we try to create like seating, which is all on the floor. We have a table that we all sit around. We all are called by our first names. There is not Miss, Mr., Ma'am, Teacher. No, we are all called by our first names, because respect doesn't depend on a name or a kind of an abbreviation that you add. It is what you feel for the other person. And we're all people in there. There is, we try to, none of the facilitators put on a, oh, you are so sweet kind of a voice for a child. We all talk in our normal voices, just because they're also people, and can we just talk to them as people, right? So that's kind of fundamentally where we approach things from. We consider art to be a cognitive learning process. So there is as much, if not more stress sometimes given on the arts or social studies or these subjects. Of course, we do math and sciences, but they're all interdisciplinary most of the time. As they grow older, sometimes we do focus on pure science or pure math, because they are ready for that kind of abstraction. But it doesn't mean that we will not be, there might not be poetry in maths, or a story that revolves around mathematics, or art that revolves around it. So we try and make that. A lot of it is also experiential. So we might have a theoretical offering in the morning, which might be they first do some carpentry or woodworking, and then we talk about measurement. Or if we're going to talk about the body, then our approach to it will be very different. There's a lot of parent involvement. In fact, I would say primarily our art is led, spearheaded by parents. we have a lot of emphasis on growing our own food and cooking the food that we grow, because I think that's that disconnect which is there in children today between what they eat and where it comes from is huge. And that is something we really look towards bridging that gap. We are quite blessed with a beautiful environment right now. So we have enough land to grow things, and we have a snack which we try to grow that we eat ourselves. We have cooking, we have sewing, we have a lot of art related things which can also be looked at from a skill point of view, right? If you learn how to sew and you enjoy sewing, one day it might also be of use to you. It's not just, that's why we said we look at art as a cognitive learning skill. So that's basically how we approach things. Do we have answers to everything? Not at all. Thank God, I would say. We are constantly in discussion, constantly in thinking. We take as inputs from our parents, see what they want, our children, and see how we can all work together. Sometimes I would have to say it's easier being a benevolent dictator, but we don't operate that way. We would like to be a democratic learning process, because that's what our children are going to learn when they leave, that there is a process of togetherness. There's a process that we are a community. We are not like the school is not separate from family. It's a seamless process between the two, between the facilitators, the space, the parents, the families, as much as possible, because you're also coming from different kind of cultures. And so to keep the conversation going, to keep dialogues open, to approach our mind and bodies from a more rounded, holistic way is what we're trying to do or attempting to do.
Thank you, Nandita. That was very interesting and a very holistic and interactive model that you follow. Ameeta,
Yes,
please
so
comment on.
yes. So what I would say is I'm not an educationist, but of course I'm into the mental health field. And from this point of view, what I had created was a course for parents, which is summarized into the briefest possible, which is called the Energy of Love Parenting, Wish Power Positive Parenting, I call it, which is wisdom system of holistic parenting. And how could we parents become aware, like have a map literally, because today's timings are very different from the previous timings where you had a set structure and a rigid type of parenting worked, but today you need something more fluid, which is more principle based. So this is a parenting course which is applicable, the same course whether the child is 3 years old or 30 years old. You know, you have an adult child or you have a teen child. You don't have to relearn parenting every time for different age. It's the same, it's a principle based program. And how do you access the energy of the heart or the energy of love versus fear? Because fear based communications and fear based mentoring or coaching or whatever is what is taking root of our worlds. And the same things can be moved towards with the energy of love. So in fact, one of the schools I had really done covered all the parents A to Z in that whole school, and there was a really phenomenal response. But unfortunately, the principal changed, so we didn't get to continue that experiment. And I'm looking to do more of that, so that more and more parents, we could cover 100 parents at a time, and everybody benefited so much. To be parenting with love, you need your own wounds healed. Now, of course, every parent can't go through that kind of deep therapy, but when they're equipped with this awareness of how energy of love works, they're actually able to do it. And that itself is healing in its own way. This is the main thing that I feel, because as I said, what children remember is the atmosphere of those days. That's the trauma they carry. That's what goes into their unconscious. And that's the meta ability that is getting affected. So, like we said, knowledge now is available everywhere. Courses, upskilling, Google is there, information is there. So we can get equipped with the information. But what if we have just lost all the energy to do the things because love isn't there. I mean, I don't mean mushy love, but I mean like respect based, power sharing based, and in that sense, yeah, sometimes I don't see that star system become like a reward and punishment system, but in a system you may need to have it also. Whereas in a one-to-one, it can be different. And in that sense, sometimes I feel even homeschooling as an adjunct is very necessary because a classroom becomes a system which becomes competitive, the favorite child, the non, it gets limited in it's a very closed community, so it starts getting hierarchical somewhere, unless one is really watchful, because there becomes the favorite child and the disturbing child and things like that. So complemented with some sort of a homeschooling and free space, and also very activity based learning, if that's where you are connecting with the earth, because we're just connecting with gadgets and books, but in the four walls of a classroom. And that's why the homeschooling sometimes I've noticed is very innovative, because it starts really with the child. If a child reads a story, likes the concept of a dinosaur in it, then can research the whole thing and make a mini project themselves on it. And so they've really got 3-4 things: language, English literature, creating a story. And it's a very creative process, and by which they have learned 4-5 things all together simultaneously, So biology, they've learned literature, they've learned storytelling, and then they're able to put out their work. Even at the age of 10, 15, they can put out these things, and already have almost like a vocation or a career. So I think this is what is needed somewhere, the humanizing of education.
Thank you. Thank you, Ameeta.
Yeah.
Very nice. Jayaprakash, please share your thoughts.
In our school, we follow a process where the child feels that he has a choice and he can do what he would like to do at least 45 minutes. That's very important for us, because child should never feel that going to school and I am dictated by my teachers. I'm going to school, I do whatever the teachers want me to do. No, it's not that. We want the child to do what he or she would like to do. I don't know who proposed the concept that a physics lab should be separate from chemistry lab and a biology lab should be separate from the other subject labs. No, can there be a combination of labs? That is the idea that we started with. Now we have an open lab where children can come, okay, if they like to take a look at what are the parts inside a laptop, they can open a laptop, okay, that we said there for, they can open it with the help of others, they can fix it back if they can. Okay, you can open a bicycle into parts and fix it back. We would like the children to explore what they would like to do, so that they feel, oh, there is scope in my school where I can do what I want to do. Now we have a separate place for art and craft. So they can go spend time in the art and craft room where children, okay, if they love to do a painting, glass painting, or making of a soft toy, okay, they can do it. So we want children to feel, okay, that I go to school and I do things that I like. Okay, so freedom of choice is very essential. Many universities, have come out with a system called, flexible credit system, where students can choose, their own subjects. Okay, but it's needed even in school. Okay, but children, by generations they mature faster. Okay, the next generation will be much more quicker and faster than our generation. So what we mean to say is children should feel, oh, I enjoyed my schooling. This is my school. I do things that I like. So that's where we came out with a concept called open lab. You will have, see, life does not come in compartments. The washing machine that you and I use at home, which branch of engineering is it? Okay, it has some amount of programming, it is some amount of electronics and electrical, and it has some amount of mechanical engineering because there is a motor running inside it. So life doesn't come in fragments, as I just started the discussion with. So we want to prove to the school children, so their life in school is not broken into parts and compartmentalized. No, life should come together. It comes together in an open lab. And those who are academicians here listening to us, please try this open lab system. Take a large room, let children be there and do what they would like for some time. Now 45 minutes, it will work as well as yoga for the children because their mind is free. It is not dictated by an instructor, and they would like to look at and wonder at things and meddle with things. Because it's child psychology to touch and feel, know and experiment and explore. So let them do it.
Wonderful.
Want to add one more thing?
Yeah. I just want to comment on what Jayaprakash has said, Ameeta.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's such an amazing, wonderful idea. And as you were speaking, I went back to my own childhood. My friends in my neighborhood and around my building, they used to call me a mad scientist because I used to make all these small, planes and motorized boats and, little walking robot and all that. So that was my kind of liking, and I never got a chance to do that in my school. And there was only one day, which I would be joyful. I would take my best project that I made of the year. And it would be that, we had that work experience subject. And it only came in the 7th, 8th, 9th. Okay, 10th, they said you have to study so much, so you don't get that subject. And, every time I got like A plus, A plus. So that was my only real day of joy, in the entire year. So I'm resonating so much with what you're saying that, if children can be given a regular chance to, do things that they want. And I'm sure if some of the children, the majority vote in your class says that, children say that we want to know how to make a cake, I'm sure you'll give them an opportunity to do that as well.
Yes, we have culinary skills lab. We do.
So wonderful. That's such a great idea that what is on the children's mind, it obviously comes from a need from them looking around, and it's something present. It's not got to do what should be, what was done, but what we would like to get into. So wonderful. Ameeta, yes.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to just add is along with this parenting thing, there's also for the children the map of understanding their own emotions and how to journey through your own emotions. So that I have a map for that as well, a process for it. And that's through storytelling also. Children can be equipped to do what to do when they feel rage, what to do when they feel so upset, and some of that education as well. And I liked the concept of, yes, having choice, whereas a lot of schooling feels very forced. So.
If I may quickly add something, this is already existent. It's a part of the Rudolf Steiner Waldorf system. It's a part of the Montessori system. And there is also now a movement to really bring in what you call passion projects. Now, if I am interested in, say, hairstyling, then you have a whole slot of 2 hours in a day when you pursue your passion project. And very often the schools link you up with experts in that field. Or if you're interested in software or creating software, they bring in people. So a lot of efforts are being made. I mean, I know that because from our vantage point of view, things don't seem to be working too well, but people are making efforts all over the world, and they are doing something very, very interesting. As a storyteller myself, I have a storytelling organization called Wordfully Yours, and we do storytelling for psycho-literacy with kids. Through stories, we make them aware of themselves, exactly what Ameeta said, that we tell them that when you feel anger, when you feel jealousy, it's human, but what do you do with it? So through stories, we try to make them understand without preaching to them, without saying this is the moral of the story, because I think that really kills us.
Yeah, moral really kills.
So
Yes.
I do it through literature, through storytelling. A lot of people are doing it through different subjects. I know somebody who does phenomenal work with stories, and he teaches chemistry. And he's actually given life to the elements. And to me, the most boring thing in chemistry, which I just couldn't study, was the elements. So I think a lot of efforts are being made globally, but we're doing it in isolation. It needs to come together to be able to filter into the mainstream.
Yes. Thank you, Dr.Coomi. Yes, Nandita.
Okay. So the other thing we also bring about, and I agree with both of you that yes, we do a lot of storytelling too, and that really helps. In fact, a lot of language, even different languages, we do through storytelling. But one thing we also do is that we don't have grades. We don't have like grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. What we do have is based on their ability. So the groups, because we do have a number that we cannot then have all together. So we do have groups, but the groups are based on ability more than age. So then it doesn't matter. You are in the group where you are most able to be on par with everybody else. So there's no, oh, this child is different or this child is fast, slow. You don't need to use any such language. So we just all exist and people move between groups. So it's kind of nebulous that way. So it makes it easier for a child to feel like it's okay. I can't get this right now, but I'll just go and join the other group and, you know, I'll work with them over there. So that's also something that we do. And we also believe that, you know, formal schooling has too much of classroom setting where it's only 9-year-olds together, only 5. It's so unreal. I mean, that's not how life is. I mean, none of us are the same age group here, right? But that doesn't mean we can't have a conversation or a dialogue. So why is it that we kind of create this fictional space of everybody who's 5 years old should be, and the 5-year-old will not engage with the 6-year-old because there's just no time. So that's something we've tried to remove so that they have enough time to play together across age groups also. So if you have cooking sessions, then it's not just the 8-year-olds who are cooking together, but the whole, whoever's interested in cooking will cook together.
Right.
So.
Wonderful, wonderful system. Nandita, thank you for sharing that. Now I'll just go on to the last question and then we'll get into Q&A from the audience. So the last is, to the panelists, how can our viewers get in touch with you to know more about your work and educational projects? And so please also mention if there's part of your work that's at a particular location, then please speak about that. And if some of the education is available online, then speak of that also. Jayaprakash, would you like to take that first?
We would certainly like to put our information on our website. Okay, it's Rising Star Outreach of India.org, and we have an international website, risingstar.outreach.org. Okay, it's already typed in the chat box. Okay, you can take a look at our website.
Okay.
And feel free to contact. The name of our school is Peary Matriculation, Higher Secondary School. It's in Kanchipuram district, very close to Chennai city.
Okay.
So, and also on my name, my Facebook page is there. Okay, feel free to contact me. We do a lot of things in our school. Now, I believe in innovation and entrepreneurship. These two words are going to drive the future of education. The only way that we can accomplish a lot more and overcome the unemployability, okay, is through innovation and entrepreneurship. So we are building this school towards excellence, and you are welcome to come and see how we are making a difference.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Jayaprakash. Dr. Coomi, how can our viewers access your work? And yes, somebody was also asking about the book, how to buy the book.
The book is available on Amazon, and the second book is a cheaper book. You can get it at about $450 or $500, $480, I think. What Children Really Want. Sourceful Education is a very, very heavy book for educators. It's very research based, and it costs about $2,800. So what Children Really Want is easier to access, and it's freely available. Having said that, I'm into a very major project, which Darryl, you know of. It's called the Global Tipping Point Summit, which is an action-oriented summit. Usually what happens is that we educationists and others go and attend seminars, workshops, refresher courses, whatever. We learn a lot, but then we don't really act on it. So this is completely action-based, in the sense that we will have a speaker giving a TEDx kind of talk for 20 minutes. At the end of 20 minutes, the speaker names an action project. There will be 4 people. We don't want to call them trainers because the word trainers creates hierarchy. So we will have 4 change facilitators who have been already liaising with the speaker and deciding on which particular aspect of that mini project they will provide training in. Now, they will provide training to a group called the action group. How is the action group going to be constituted? This seminar, this summit starts, it has 2 verticals, education and parenting, because I think all of us here agree that educators and parents need to be on the same page. We have some fantastic international and national speakers, and this project has been supported by Tata Trent and Godrej and several others. So what we are going to do is that from the 20th of November to the 13th of December, we will have only 1 speaker do a talk on a Saturday and 1 speaker on a Sunday. Because it follows this kind of structure, it's going to be speaker speaking, 4 change facilitators, then talking about the area in which they will provide training, and then encourage the online audience to sign up, go Google Forms and become a part of our action group. The action group will get trained by the change facilitators for the first 3 months, and then they go out and they disseminate the ideas and they put these ideas into practice and they come back with their findings. The whole concept is to make it an annual kind of summit and to really generate visible change. So just in case you're interested, you're welcome to visit our website. I will type the website address in the chat box shortly. It's www.gtps4change. 4 is a numeral for change.org. If you want to know the kind of work I personally do, I do a lot of work in education, nationally, internationally. I also work with parents, and I talk about deep parenting and how it can be achieved, and the results are really good. So I do parenting, I do education workshops, I do speech workshops, how to become a powerful speaker, an inspirational speaker. I do storytelling workshops. And most importantly, I do transformative workshops based on my training under 2 major Jungian psychologists, Dr. Eugene Pascal and Dr. Jean Chenot-Daboulen. How do you look within yourself? How do you work with self-awareness, and which is important for people across the board. So these are.
Doctor, there's a website where all of these things that you spoke of that you offer, that people can get to see them and access them.
Yes, but let me be very, very honest with you. There is a slight glitch there. I need to be able to update that website. It's not really updated. And I'm so overwhelmed with the summit work just now. Oh, by the way, this 18th of this month, I'm going to have a youth forum, because we constantly keep saying as adults, we're doing it for children, but we don't really empower them and give them a voice. So we had 10 young people who are from different boards and different levels of education coming and saying what kind of changes they would like to see in education and parenting. So please, you're entirely welcome to this. You're entirely welcome to this. And it's free. The summit is absolutely free.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
The name.
Okay, yes, please do.
Thank you.
Yes, Nandita, would you like to share how people can get in touch with you and your work?
So there are 2 things that we do. One is the Learning Center, which is based in Goa, and somebody called Miguel has very sweetly already put in the website link. We also have a consultancy called Furthering Education, where we don't have a website for that because we work with schools or other educational institutions for a long period of time. So we start looking at either from grassroots of redesigning the curriculum or looking at the current philosophy and curriculum and seeing where are they at, where are they wanting to go with it. So we start at the board and then work from the board with parents, with teachers, with children, with admin staff, with maintenance crews, everybody. So it's like long drawn projects which include everything, be it teacher training or counseling or so it's entire project based. So We don't advertise that because there are not many takers, to be honest. So we work with one school at a time. Most of our clients right now are not from India. Unfortunately, it would be nice to have clients from our own country. But the Learning Center is online. We also have a Facebook page. We're not very up to date on our kind of updating our website with pictures and populating it, but the Facebook page does have all information. And so, yes, you can call or reach us through either of these mediums, Facebook or our website.
Thank you, Nandita. Ameeta, how would you
Yeah.
like people to get in touch with your work?
Yes, so I'm on Facebook. My Facebook page is Center for Positive Power, CENTER. And I also have a website, but again, even my website is not as, it gives a general overview of all that I do, but it's the Facebook page and the Instagram where I post off and on. And my main offerings are this parenting course, which is generic, so all age group parents can be collected together, large groups can do it together and still benefit, and in the shortest time, and also for children and youth to have the emotional understanding through courses of NLP and emotional journeying and learning and inner healing processes. So this is my main focus.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ameeta. So now we can take up some questions in the Q&A box, and I'll start with the first one from Miguel Werner. And he's asking, what's the role of industry experts in today's education?
The role of industry experts is becoming more and more important. Okay, each year, each academic session, it's very essential. For example, ask a child, what does your father do? He works in so-and-so company. Then you ask him another question. What does he do in that company? He'll give you the designation and say he is a assistant manager in production department. Okay, what does your father do? Is the question answered? Maybe the child himself does not know what father actually does. Okay, so what is the information given? It's a very surface level information. He works in XYZ company and he is an assistant manager in the production department. The child, when does the child get to explore what does father actually do? So this is how exactly the career preparation of the children in this country is. Okay, children do not know what they're going to do when they get into a certain kind of profession. So the reason is we do not let children explore. Okay, the spirit of exploration is really, really missing. Okay, many of the questions are not answered. Children are trained with a bad habit of thinking in bits and pieces. Children cannot think longer on the same subject for 10 minutes. Okay, we are not training them to do so. For example, long ago, the education system introduced us to essay writing. Essay writing is a great practice of developing the brain's capacities. But what do? We buy an essay writing book and say, please by heart this essay and replicate it in the examination or when the teacher asks you to write an essay. So by doing so, what have we done? We have killed the ability of the mind to discuss a topic for a long time. Okay, now the essay is also by hearted and written. So that's a bad practice. So what we are saying is industry relevance is very high today in the market. Even school children need to know what happens in a particular industry. Last year, I have taken the senior children of our school to a silk printing industry where the beautiful saris and the cloths that women use. How do they get printed? How do they become so beautiful? Okay, so children have had hands-on experience on printing on saris and scarves. So what I mean to say is industry cannot be divided or separated from academia anymore. Industry and academia need to join hands and work together. Every classroom needs to have some industry expert come and visit, speak. Even if it's a beautician or a policeman, they better be invited to the classroom and be spoken to, and the children need to be addressed.
I would like to just say that it's not just industry experts, because that becomes one side of society. So right. I think you need experts in all fields come to the school and share, because how the farmer, the organic farming, and this, preserving the earth also, the person who looks after forests, and these type of areas also really need to be exposed into the classroom, because industrial development itself has, at one level, development has gone a little bit toxic and ignored so many aspects, and we are looking at schools and education system as preparing only for that industrial sector and jobs, and because that's where you
That's
make the
right.
money. But we need the other people also, who bring in a holistic perspective, and sometimes who are working just out of compassion and pure passion in greening, like Thimaka, who won the Bharat Bhushan. She planted 100 banyan trees as her children and 8,000 other trees, and I was just a casual laborer. So you need role models of these different types, who are greening the planet and who are doing more than just money making.
Oh, absolutely. I'd just like to add
Mm,
something here.
mm.
A very interesting model has been proposed, perhaps you know this, by the current CEO of the Tata Group, Mr. Chandrasekharan, in his book called Digital Nation. And he's talking about exactly this, how people
Wow.
can bridge all these silences and gaps and create a free flow and what I called earlier a learning ecosystem for children.
Mm, mm.
So it's a very interesting book, and there is a chapter on education. But I mean, it depends on educationists to really take this up and work on it. And this is not an area, frankly, that I have explored, but it's something worth looking at.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Kumi. And that just brought to mind a conversation this morning, with one of a president of our Lions Club, where I'm a uh, member. And it was 3 days back that I was invited as a guest to speak at this Green Meadows school in Para, that's in Goa.
Yeah.
And so the things what the Lions Club wanted to give them is education on a few things, and they had asked me to go and speak about that. So they had chosen three topics, okay, and the first topic was the relationship between food and health, and because I'm a domain expert there, they called me for that. And they've also heard that I have done, because besides food and health of the human body, I've also got into organic farming, and into an environmentalist. I work in environment as well, and I have done some amazing presentations and talks on the environment, people's daily choices, and how unknowingly it is the damaging the environment. And of course, these are to be viewed not as external projects, but it's a common future that we are talking of, that is degrading. Like Ameeta said, all of these industrialized, all of the courses are bringing science and bringing, technologies and jobs that are virtually damaging. There are not all of them. There are
Yes.
so many of them that are damaging the planet, and there needs to be a counter, force from the other side for the people who want to protect the planet and know some science and technology and education that needs to come to it. So that was the second topic and the third topic they asked for is cancer.
Mm.
Why is cancer happening so much, and what can people do to prevent cancer? So this call came from something that's so relevant and present in the world and what is going on. So it seems to be that there are needs that have to be served, because not only parents but the common public and even children are observing certain things. So I would like to ask this question. Maybe it's just an idea, and if it's already out there or somebody is working on it, it would be really wonderful to get access to it. And it's about the whole system. A second point I would like to share is that I started working in Goa, and in the newer green technologies, and we're basically trying to do new things, new emerging. So a new kind of experience-based learning is something new that's happening in education. Like organic farming or natural farming is something that's happening
Yes.
in farming. Okay, then in expressiveness or arts, there are some things new that are emerging. And if you look at energy, for engineers and all that, so there are renewable energy. and people are looking at, future versions. It's not just the old solar panels and the old, windmills. They are teaching us also that certain things that are thought are very sustainable are not so sustainable, and newer
Yes.
technologies are coming. So these are all emerging sciences as we are trying to fix this damaged planet.
Mm.
So coming from that perspective of what's going, that there are needs and calls coming in for new things to be done. And so is there any mechanism in this country or any other country where maybe there are, uh, like even if it start as like polls, parents polls, then children's polls of what they would like to learn or what are the important things to get into. And when people, ask me, you left engineering at the top of your, peak, and you were drawing a certain salary that we know you were supply chain engineer and head of department, you were earning that. How did you manage to go and start doing a health workshop and doing organic farming? Does it make any money? So I said, you'll be surprised to know that I make, on my own choice, depending on the time I give, I can make 2 to 3 times the same monthly salary that I used to do earlier. And the reason I can do it is because I'm in the area where there are first movers, so there's always new business, there are always new clients. And I think this should happen in the education system. We are teaching all our children old sciences, old engineering and whatnot. They are all competing for an old job that science is, faded away. So is there any such system where people get to say that these are the requirements in society, this is the work, and according to that, these are the jobs, and this is the education that we look forward to? So any comment on that? Is this kind of analysis happening? Like Werner asked, the experts in the country, are they working on something like this or not?
Um, Definitely. I think people are looking at it. As I said, that though phenomenon-based learning, project-based learning, collaborative learning, where children are involved even in the designing of the curriculum. This is huge because what children come up with are things that adults have never thought of. So it is happening, but unfortunately, it's not happening the way I perceive it in my humble way. I don't feel it's happening at the scale at which it needs to happen and not quickly enough.
So that's, yeah. So one vote is coming from what you're saying. That is the vote from the children, what they would like to do and what they would like to experience. And so the other two votes, I would say, are, the parents or the people who are planning for who is planning the GDP of this country, for example, right? What are the businesses they want to flourish, and what are the green, sciences? So a lot of call has to come from these kind of people who are saying this is the future of business, this is the future of work, and this is, the future work. So so any teachers or any expert, thinker, think tank, is there any such thing in India or across the world? Yes, Nandita.
Well, I think this links back to the question that was posed earlier. What is the role of industry experts? To be honest, I didn't quite understand what the question, what kind of an answer the question wanted. But my interpretation is that industry experts, I think they have a responsibility towards providing these kind of green solutions, towards looking back at what they are creating in terms of industry and their requirement, and therefore working in tandem with educationists, educational institutions, to see how collaborations can happen and move forward in the kind of holistic lives we would like to lead. I mean, I'm a little bit of a realist, and I don't see that happening. At least the least I see industrial experts can do is not finance huge schools, which are then franchised out and then offering world leaders and like all these kinds of, with horse riding and air conditioned classrooms, which actually get you nowhere. So it's just to maintain that the top 2% of this world continue to remain top 2%. So my thought on the role of leaders, whoever these leaders are in whatever capacity, to be more responsible towards the rest of us. the rest of humanity, and to see, I think that is, if someone starts compiling these things, by the time they finish compiling, things would have changed. I think we can allow Google to compile, and we see how can we innovate. Because if all these think tanks would take up so much time in thinking and compiling, that the child has grown up and become an adult. So I think we need to be, as educationists, much more faster and proactive to the current needs by acting on with children and families who are there in front of us. I mean, we have to begin somewhere. What is happening is we're all spending too much time just thinking up of solutions and not acting. So I really like your idea of the global, Kumi, what you were talking about. I mean, I think that's phenomenal. If there's an idea, let's see how we can translate that idea into action. And is that action actually working? Because if it isn't, well, let's just move on to the next one. Like, it's lovely to discuss, but at some point we need to stop and start working.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, so I would like to at least mention some, something at least happening here in Goa in that direction, and of course on the same platform that you are speaking right now, the New Earth Summit. All of our 30 topics are solutions to our current problems in health, food, farming, and environment. So we are bringing out those new sciences. We are highlighting certain things that are not working or dysfunctional, and bringing in the, the new awareness. So this is actually entirely an education platform in what people need to get educated on, because the pioneers, few of the pioneers who have tried these technologies and have projects and success, we are bringing them onto the platform. So in effect, they are bringing the knowledge, and they are teachers of what can be implemented as solutions. So I will take the next question, and the two comments and a question from the same person, Vasundhara. First of all, to Dr. Coomi, Vasundhara says, Dr. Coomi, I would wish to be part of your team, please. I live in Bangalore and so please help me connect with the right resources. And here is a question, a long statement. There are many homeschooling communities, but can someone suggest if we have any online homeschooling initiatives globally? I am a software engineer who just quit IBM, mother of a 6-year-old son who aspires to look into homeschooling and spread any of great works of the panelists. So yes, online homeschooling.
I
Any
won't,
resources?
I won't claim to be an expert on homeschooling, but from what I know, huge amount of work is being done in this area. Because one of the biggest fears that homeschoolers have is that the child may not really develop social and emotional intelligence if the child is cocooned at home, protected at home, allowed to do things. But things are changing very, very quickly. Now we have a huge network of homeschoolers. There is a very, very active group in Chennai and an equally active group in Pune. I know of these two groups, and what they are trying to do is to get the children who are homeschooled together at certain times. And suppose I have an expertise in singing or in music, then I bring the children together and I take those music classes. So the whole concept of homeschooling is expanding, evolving, and it's becoming very interesting. And of course, during the pandemic, we have been forced to virtually homeschool, because apart from the teachers appearing for a few online classes, mainly the children have to be mentored at home. And I don't think it's very conducive to the growth of the child to be only at home watching the digital medium and learning from there. Homeschooling, of course, is a far broader concept. And I think if parents feel that they should go in for it, by all means. But a lot of work is happening both in US and in Pune and Chennai in India. That's what I can answer.
Lovely. Thank you, Dr. Kumi. And of course, they could get daily assignments with their parents that are outdoor assignments. right?
Yes, yes. And Vasundhara, I would love to get to know you and definitely make you a part of the summit in some way. So is it okay, Darryl, to put down my number, my
Yes,
phone
please,
number?
yes, please do that.
I'll do that. I'll do
Yes,
that. Vasundhara,
Nandita,
get
Nandita, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I guess since I'm the only homeschooling parent on this panel, I can also say a little bit about this. So, Vasundhara, there is a site called Swasikshan. Swasikshan means self-learning. So there are, and there's similar named page on Facebook. There are over 10,000 families registered on these sites. So you can have a look at what they have to say. There's a lot of sharing that happens. There are big groups. I mean, there are groups all across the country. We meet every year. I don't think we'll meet in 2021 given the current situation, but every year we have an annual Swasikshan meet, which happens in different parts of the country. So families come and they interact, and there are more than, on an average, about 100, 150 children who come together. So the total size is about 350, 400 people. There is a whole, homeschooling is a very limited word actually. We have tried to consciously move away from homeschooling to call it swasikshan, which is self-learning. Because homeschooling again takes over the fact that someone else is telling you what you need to learn or how you need to learn it or where you need to get it. But self-directed learning is more the paths that we as a group that started this movement is looking at. There is, yes, as Kumi said, a very vibrant group in Pune. There is one in Bangalore, in Madras. So if you just go to the website and the Facebook page, you will find lots of people in your area who are homeschooling. It's a huge movement. There's a lot of resources you'll find. But you can't subcontract homeschooling. You can't say, okay, I will homeschool, but I'll go to work, but my child will homeschool and I'll find 5 people to do it for me. Better you send him or her to school, right? Because it doesn't work that way. You exist as a family. The approach you take could be different. It could be homeschooling where you give your child assignments and homework and you teach, or you find a tutor to come and do different things, or you explore with your child, which a lot of people also do, which is called more exploratory kind of learning, and some people call it de-schooling. I would prefer not to use the word schooling at all in any way. So there are various means. My son is 16. He's never been to school. Right? He's an only child. Does that mean he is doesn't have friends? Not at all. He has a whole social network. He has interests that he has chosen to follow, be it learning Japanese or watching anime or capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial art, or reading. Somewhere along the day, we never sat down with him and taught him how to read or taught him how to write. He learned it. When there's a need and there's an interest, he learn it. But it requires you as a parent to have a lot of patience to say, take a deep breath, and this will happen. It doesn't mean you're hands off, you don't do anything. We constantly read to him, we constantly talk to him, we dialogue with him, we don't talk down to him. It's an equal relationship. So there's a lot of thinking that goes on if you're planning to homeschool. There's tons of information out there, tons. You just have to Google homeschooling and you will find so much that it's kind of overwhelming also. Read John Holt, read Sudbury Valley, there are lots of things. If you go to our website, there is a whole page just dedicated to different books and kind of links to excellent articles on education, be it homeschooling, schools, unschooling, whatever. So, but start your search. Don't jump into the deep end and then swim, because you're not the only one here. Your child is also there. So, yeah, happy to have further conversations with you, Vasundhara, if you're interested in homeschooling.
Yeah, very insightful. Thank you, Nandita. And if you could type, that website name in the chat box, that would, really serve people. I would like to go to the next question, which is, it was about from Frida. what is your say on the new education policy? Has something come out newly that? Yes,
Okay.
Jayaprakash, please, you nodded your head. Please take it first.
New education policy is excellent. Okay, but there are limitations. Okay, by the time government comes out with how to implement that policy at the grassroots levels, okay, there is a delay. That's why schools and teachers, should go forward a bit and catch up with the vision of the new national education policy.
If you would,
So at the
if you
end
could,
of the day,
Jayaprakash, if you could, so I have not seen that policy, and for our attendees also, what would be the three, the first 3 points that came up in that policy, which are something really new and good compared to what we already have? Do you know? Would you be able to mention
the new
what are the
national
three
education
things?
policy brings preschooling also into formal schooling. Okay.
Okay.
The second most important thing is they have introduced handiwork, skill building into syllabus, and
Okay.
also they have changed the graduation process where there can be multiple entries and multiple exits into graduation system. First year of graduation you can drop out, you get a certificate. Second year of graduation you go out with a diploma. Third year you go out with a degree, and fourth year you go out with an honors. So like that, multiple entry and exit systems into graduation. But the phenomenal change, okay, that's the new national education policy promotes is skill building, okay, into courses. So that I think that's what is phenomenal about it. By the time we catch the vision, the colleges and schools implement the policy, there cannot be a time lag. If there is delay, policy's effectiveness is lost. I hope the education is move on, be proactive and catch up with the vision.
But I have a concern there because teachers who have not been taught at the B.Ed level or at any level of their own education to impart skill-based education, how do they do it? Aren't we putting the cart before the horse? Also, one of the most wonderful things that seems to have come out of this system, the new policy, it says that you should educate people in their mother tongue. Sounds great. Countries like Japan or the Scandinavian countries. Now, if I have a class in which there are 30 children belonging to 7 to 12 to 20 different languages, how do I teach them? Am I supposed to employ that many teachers? I mean, how does it work? It looks good on paper, but how does it work? So I think much more thought has to go into how it can be translated into something which is doable. This is my take.
Okay. Thank you, Coomi. Any other panelists on the new education policy?
I agree with Kumi. I mean, yeah, how do you do it in a mother tongue with so much, such a large population that also migrates from one state to another? How do you implement it? Some of the ideas mentioned are good, especially like the vocational, bringing in the experiential, bringing in, a four-tiered graduation, like undergrad degree, which is like a liberal arts. The ideas are good. I really don't know how they're going to implement it. That is my concern because, like Kumi said, there is just no training. And then they've also allowed institutions to decide for themselves how they want to implement it. So while the idea, that's kind of the general problem with our policies, right? The policies are good. There's no, how do you implement it? That's not a question no one's answering now.
Yes, exactly. I was going to second the same thing that the policies are good, but what are you going to be your steps to implement it? And
it has
at the
to
same
be
time,
built up. I mean, instead of 20 good ideas, we can start with 2 good ideas and make sure that they work and gradually build things up. Now, these 20 ideas look good on paper, but it would be quite a disaster if they don't work. So instead of that, really create the infrastructure, really do the groundwork, and then allow only 2 to be implemented and successfully implemented. I think that is absolutely crucial.
Thank you.
And there is no emphasis on research. My biggest grouse against this policy is there is no emphasis on research. And educational research is vital because education has to be contextualized. The kind of education that the Ambanis receive is very different from the kind of education that children receive in rural India. So we have to cater to the population, to the larger group, rather than a selected few. I think that is also a consideration.
Thank you, Kumi. And something comes to mind, especially with the language problem. And I mean, this is a thought that I had, a decade back when I thought about people, learning things at the village level or national. And the thought was very simple. We know that every human being on average, they know, three, four languages, you know. So the thought about if, it could be implemented globally that everybody knows at least three languages, because that's simpler than how much we know right now. Three languages: one is your native mother tongue, one is your national language, and one is a global language. Now they can have the vote on the global language, maybe it's English or maybe it's Latin. But if that was something that even is implemented in India, so any national level program that's done or its outreach goes to everybody, it could be in maybe in Hindi. And if it's an international program, it could be people could learn it in English. And if it's a very local state program, then it could be learned in the local language. So have you all ever thought of, is there any thought of policy of people, who are promoting this kind of an idea that in just three languages, you get the entire communication, local, national, and global, it's done.
This was the system earlier where you learned English, you also learned Hindi, and you learned a mother tongue. I am deeply, deeply respectful of mother tongue, but I have also worked in slums of Mumbai with parents having such great concerns. They want their children to be educated only in English. And just to give you one actual real life story, I had one emergency call from the principal of a slum school calling me because the father had tied his son to the fan because a child wouldn't speak in English. Now, one had one had to rush and talk very, very empathetically because there was so much of emotional investment. And that man said, I've suffered because I don't know English, and I don't want this fool not to be able to speak in English after going to an English medium school. So I think, as we all agreed earlier, parents have to be brought on the same page. And there are lots of concerns, even among the I am also a part of the advisory board of a school for underprivileged children, and almost without exception the parents are saying we want our children to be able to fluently speak in English, which is I know it is very, very problematic because they expect so much out of the children. The children don't hear English being spoken at home. But this three language formula is something that we have had. I think definitely the mother tongue has to be respected because you think, you dream in your mother tongue. And it is your first language. It's a language you're most
Right.
comfortable in. And in countries like Japan and other monolingual countries, learning in Japanese is good enough. They have all the concepts. But here, I think the situation is very different because we are so diverse. There are not only that many languages, but that many dialects.
Yes, Nandita, thank you, Dr. Kumi. Nandita, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we did get right is at the very initial stages say that we don't have a national language, we have two official languages. I think that makes life slightly simpler. And what we're forgetting is that we have had the privilege of going to an English medium school, having parents who speak English, who have been surrounded by the English language, conversing in a webinar in English. So why are we then saying those guys, we are fine because we have said our kids will speak English. So why are we taking away that aspiration from a section of our society which doesn't already have a voice? Then we say that English will come in high school or some third language, mother tongue is important. Why? Why? I mean, why can't we get their aspirations? And if they want to have English, so be it.
I
One of the
agree with
reasons
that.
we
Yeah.
can compete internationally in the IT sector is because we can speak English, because we have the fluency. And, you know, Darryl, on an average, every Indian does speak 3 languages. If you see, most of the ones who can't are the ones who are growing up in cities, like my kids or some of the kids. Their kids may not know 2 or 3 languages. They probably are monolingual in English. But most of the others, you don't have to worry. They can speak their mother tongue and 5 others. If you go to the beaches in Goa, you know, Darryl, how many languages do those people speak who sell shawls or other
Right.
artifacts?
They
They
at least
speak
speak
Russian,
5 languages.
they speak German, they speak English,
Yeah.
Hindi, Telugu, Kannada. I don't think we need to worry about
So
languages.
yeah, so it's their
Yeah.
business needs. It's their business needs that makes them speak these different languages to
But
customers.
If I could just add something to what Nandita said very quickly, I
Yes,
think it's extremely important to open up languages to children, because instead of shutting down, open up languages, because as psychologists tell us, children can learn as many as 21 languages before the age of 11. So when they are learning languages comfortably, we don't have to shut them down and say, no, 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 you only keep to this one language or only keep to these 2 languages.
yes.
And I
Thank you.
think English is all the high level textbooks, all the work. Even when I was working with an NGO, the jobs for peons also, they wanted an English speaking peon so that he can deliver the letters and things. So I think English is, whether we like it or not, it is a necessary almost language for progress.
Anyway, so yeah, so that serves at least
It needs to be,
the idea of everybody in the world, they can talk to each other in one language.
yes.
That it serves that purpose. And we have reached our time, and it's 8 o'clock. But I would just like to slip in one last question, which I think is very important, since we are talking of alternative models of learning and homeschooling. And maybe Nandita can be the first panelist to reply to this. Two parts to it. One is that is there, because as children grow up, as they're going through 12, 13, 14, 15, so in homeschooling thoughts in all the groups, are there some markers or some ideals that about at the age of 15 or 16 or 17 or 18, a child needs to reach this level of self-sufficiency learning? And mainly what I'm talking of is earning a profession or earning capacity in life. Definitely in homeschooling, it will be in the area of their liking. But do parents look at that at the age of 18, that my child should at least be able to earn, get into that and understand what is value, how exchange happens in this world, and build certain skills where they offer something and they can get some money. So I'm talking of, a job or being an entrepreneur. So are there any benchmarks, 18 or 20 is a good time? Because now I'm just looking at my own neighbor. They have a son who was, they say, homeschooled, but they didn't do much work on it, and he kind of picked up everything. He's 17 years now, and when you ask him what you want to do, he has no model in his mind of this is what I want to hang out with my friends. I'm interested in plants, so I look at some plants. But do you want to be a farmer? Do you want to make products? No, I don't think so. And then what do you want to do? So he's just got these sets of interests that now the parents are getting worried. Is it going to translate into some time into, because the parents now have stopped working and they're retired, and there's no money coming in. So, is there any this in homeschooling? Because why I'm speaking about this, since 10 years I've been looking at not in deep, but I've been looking at the Steiner and Waldorf education, a very experience-based learning system, and I said, my goodness, just at the age of 10 or 12, a Waldorf student can do so much more and know so much more about life. And through being an ambassador at this, the Global Peace and Prosperity program, which was run by the WINS network. the Women's International Networking Society, which is in about 140 countries. It's headed by Dr. Paula Fellingham. She's an amazing educator herself and written several books. And she's written a book that's called, she's got a course, and I signed up for that course, okay? I paid for it. Uh, Masters in Business on the Street, okay? So that was kind of because I knew this gap was there, that once somebody comes out from Steiner, and if the parents are looking that, getting a normal job as an engineer or whatever in our current systems, there is a misfit. They have some wonderful skill sets, but they don't exactly fit the bill of getting an engineering job or something like that if they've not been trained specifically in that. So I saw a gap between experiential based learning and then how are they supposed to make money in the world? Uh, that's the question.
I have a question for you, a return question to you, Darryl. How many 17-year-olds who go to school can earn an income?
Yes.
They all go to college or they go to higher forms of education, right?
Right.
Right. So similarly, it's not like a homeschool child is just confined to the house and not being allowed to interact with the world as such. They do go out, they have various interests, and one of those interests will translate into a higher form of education, which can easily be achieved through going, if you need to write an exam, you can do it through NIOS, or you can do it through the IGCSE, or the A levels, or the IBs. There are multiple ways of doing it. And to go on to further studies like a college. I can name you hundreds of people I know who have gone on to this. I know children who have not done any exam and gone on to higher forms of education to become precisely engineers, if that's what they've chosen, or eurythmics students, or even doctors. So it's not that they cannot achieve any of these things. They have, I think, the freedom to choose even a little later, right? Now, if you were given an opportunity to, or the freedom to explore, maybe you would have arrived at where you are now 15 years back, right? Who knows? So the advantage of being in a homeschooling situation is that you have a chance to explore. And why are we in such a hurry to decide at 17 what you need to do? Why? I mean, if the only thing is to go out and to be earning an income, I can guarantee you, whoever this kid you talked about now, if you send him outside, he'll be able to earn an income to sustain himself. But is that the motive? What is your motive for bringing up your child? If you have made your child confident that when I decide to do what I want to do, I can focus on it and get it done to my best satisfaction and to that of others, they'll be able to do it. Give them the confidence to do that. And why is it that, and I've heard this question many times posed to homeschoolers, immediately by the time the child is 18, what incomes are your child looking at? Well, why do we expect it of an 18-year-old child who's homeschooled and not looked at for the child who's going to school? Why? Why this difference? Why not equal opportunity? Right? So the benchmarks are the same. The benchmarks are in your eyes. If you are going to benchmark a child, just benchmark them equally, whether they're whichever homeschool or unschool or school that they're going to. And the opportunities that are available today are enormous. There are universities that do not require a 12th standard degree for you to apply in. And these are like outstanding universities across the world. You just have to find out. The information is there.
Yes, yes. So point taken, of course, from what all the panelists shared earlier, that homeschooling is not a narrow bandwidth of schooling. There's a lot of interaction and people are going out and getting life skills, right? So I didn't mean that homeschooling means that they only learn a limited curriculum. I also made the point that in homeschooling, you're probably giving them outdoor and many other projects that are, out of the home. So they do get the experience. So my question with this one example was, I mentioned 17-year-old, not that he had to get an earning there, but even at this point in time, there was no direction of, what they kind of want to pursue also. So now my question to you was, in your kind of, in the system, what would be that kind of age or time where you would say that, or maybe you're saying it's the same benchmark, that is, uh, once homeschooling happens, then they do have the skills, and to get into, higher education, of course, there would be a lot of entrance exams. Then would that be the normal route, that they sit for the entrance exams, and when they get into it, then of course they get into the higher formal education?
The higher forms of education is not just the IITs or the XLRIs or the BITS, right? There are,
Right.
like for instance, I know a child who's gotten to Reed College in the US, right? He has had no formal education till the age of 18 when he decided, okay, I want to study this. And in 1.5 years, he did his K to 12, wrote his exams, and went to Reed on a full scholarship, right? I know somebody else who has wanted to, all her life, she wanted to get into MIT, and unschooled child, wrote her exams, IIT entrance exams, got through it, but IIT refused to give her admission because she didn't have a 12th standard certificate. This child is today at MIT, right? So, but the point is, if you ask me this question when I was 17, Darryl, what do you want to do in life? I had no idea. I had absolutely none. So I would have fallen into the same category of this poor parents. They don't know what their child is like. God knows what is going to happen to her life. I changed 3 careers before I found what I wanted to do. So if we are going to give ourselves that freedom to choose, why can't we be a little more patient for whichever child? And that's when I come back to your thing is of wherever your child is, give them the opportunity to find themselves, support them. I'm not saying let them be lazy lumps in the house, not at all, but encourage them to try different things, to fail at hundreds of things, because out of that failure comes all these experiences and this knowledge about the self, which you will find them going into making them much better, wiser human beings. If on one side, as a parent, if someone wanted to do a PhD and live in your house till you're 35, the parent would happily say, "Haan, bacha karo," right? So then support your child even on other ways. If they want to try something else and have really not succeeded, okay, try something else. I'm not saying you have to wait till 35. Before 35, they'll find their way.
Thank you, Nandita, for that. Jayaprakash, you wanted to say something in between?
Yes, it's very important to give freedom of choice and let them work on their own. But at the same time, we should also remember way back in 1897, the whole world was fighting for running a 100 meters Olympic race for within 12 seconds. But today we are running at 9.66 seconds. Okay, so excellence needs benchmarking. Okay, we need the bar to be raised. So homeschoolers or school teachers informal, please remember that we need to set benchmarks. We need to set goals. We need to know what skills sets need to be achieved by a certain age group, by a certain standard. So see, professionally and scientifically studying our profession is very important. We need to formalize it. So school teachers need to record their experiences. A retired teacher takes away a wealth of knowledge with him or with her. Okay, that's a fact. Okay, we need to scientifically study our profession, write books on how to teach physics to ninth graders. It's an important book, and we cannot assume that everybody knows it. Everybody knows it is taking it for granted. Okay, that way we are losing a lot of wealth. Teachers need to record, homeschoolers need to record their experiences, what needs to be accomplished by a certain time. So benchmarking, I always recommend it, and I say bar needs to be raised as the generation pass by. Yeah,
I would like to second that, because I have seen many children what exactly problem that Darryl is, and I don't think it's homeschooling or it is schooling, whichever way it is, but we are helping the child to sort of narrow down their choices, and they need to make a choice and make a commitment to certain area and develop that as their career. And yes, they may change it, like do something, then give it up, do something else, but they are going towards that system and formation, because otherwise there is a depression forming that, my friends and peers, and, we don't compare, but the comparison traps happen naturally because you have peers who are traveling the world, who have money to spend, and here you are dependent on your parents, and such situations do develop, and then they lose the steam or the momentum to be able to feel as if they can't catch up. Though it's not true, but they feel as if they can't. So I do think that some structure and direction to formalize that uh, that kind of discussion has to happen. Okay, one child may find it earlier, one child may find it later. That's fine. That also happens in formal education, puts too much pressure on this, and then when a child fails it, then they are depressed because they did that CA exam, they didn't get it, then they did their CA exam second time, and didn't get in, and then they have no motivation to do anything else. So you can have that happen either which way, even when you are structured or otherwise. But that means that whole resilience, being able to handle the setbacks and have that kind of an outlook of curiosity towards discovering the self-realization through the choice of interest and vocation. This is a conversation that needs to happen with a mentor, facilitator, parent, and the child, so they are coming to something where they actually contribute to the world with a particular potential.
Thank you, Ameeta. Dr. Kumi, any last words on this?
No, I'm absolutely in agreement with Ameeta. And even at the MA level, I have had students finish MA and then say, ma'am, what are we supposed to do with our lives now?
Yeah.
And should we just go on to do an MPhil, or should we just go on to do a PhD? But why? Why do you really want to do it? Are you interested in research? No, we don't know what to do. So I think as Ameeta very rightly pointed out, some children get it, some children take a while. And I think that one just has to be there to support them and compassionately, without being intrusive, just guide them as best as we can.
Thank you, Kumi. And so we will end now with I'm really grateful and thanks to, and I'm sure all our audience is also very grateful for all your wisdom and insights, the different models and ideas that y'all have brought through.
Really.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Darryl, for organizing this.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Yes, you're most welcome. And yeah, all of this, what we are doing is with the thought that there are special people like all of you who have been pioneering and working for, and looking at what's happening in mainstream and seeing that it's not really working out, and you have your own ideation and vision for the world, and you're all doing your individual work. And when people and our effort is to bring such people on to expose them to our audiences and greater audiences. That's what the entire New Earth Summit is about. And it's all it's all coming together. And thanks for your time and this commitment, and keep doing everything y'all are doing and much more, so we can showcase more of it in the future.